whenever we talk about war, our minds usually jump to tanks, missiles, and battles over territory. But what if the real battlefield isn't a piece of land, but the global economy itself? Today, we're going to look at the Iran-Israel conflict through that very lens, a strategic and financial snapshot. Okay, let's get into it. It's the question that hangs over every single conflict, right? We see the headlines, we see the devastation, we hear about the casualties. But behind all of that, there's another war going on. This one is measured in dollars, barrels of oil, and shipping containers. Yep, you heard that right. To find the real winners and losers in this whole thing, we're not gonna look at a map, we're gonna follow the money. Because in modern warfare, it's not just about military might anymore. It's all about economic resilience. So first things first, let's zoom out and look at the big picture. This isn't just some isolated regional fight. Oh no, its economic tremors are felt instantly, all across the entire globe. And bam, the shockwave hits the global economy almost instantly. I mean, look at these numbers. Oil prices, they shot up by more than 50%, touching over $120 a barrel. At the same time, the Strait of Hormuz, this super critical choke point for shipping, gets disrupted. And that basically yanks 20% of the world's oil supply right off the market. The result? A global supply shock that fuels inflation for pretty much everyone. So it really boils down to this super simple formula. And this is the key to understanding everything else we're about to talk about. If you're a country that sells energy, this conflict is a financial jackpot. But if you're actually fighting in the war, or if you're a country that has to buy that energy, well, you're the one paying the price. All right, let's start digging into the country-by-country breakdown and see how this all plays out. We are going to open the books on the key players in what you could call a war of wallets. First up, let's look at Israel. Now, while they're obviously militarily powerful, their economy is under an incredible amount of strain. They're basically operating in what you can only describe as a high-cost war economy. And just look at this number. It's staggering. We're talking about roughly $300 million. Not a month, not a week, every single day. You just can't sustain that kind of spending, right? It's a direct path to more debt, and it's already got credit agencies getting nervous and downgrading the country's economic outlook. It's a massive financial hemorrhage. Okay, next, the United States. You might think with its massive economy, it's gotta be a winner here, but the reality is actually something more like strategic overstretch, where the costs are just piling up way too fast. Let's just break this down for a second. The direct financial cost is already hitting $30 to $40 billion. But the hidden costs, they might be even bigger. We're seeing military resources being pulled away from a key strategic focus in Asia. And that oil shock we talked about, it risks sparking inflation right back at home. The only real upside is a small benefit for some US oil producers. So when you add it all up, the economic and geopolitical strain is just way bigger than any gain. It's a clear net loss. Now we get to Iran, and this is where the story gets a lot more complex. They are absolutely taking hits, no question about it, losing on a tactical level. But their entire strategy is built for one thing: strategic survival. The losses for Iran are pretty obvious: damaged infrastructure, crippling sanctions, a restless population. But their strategy is playing by a totally different rulebook. They control the Strait of Hormuz, which is huge leverage. They're already used to operating in a war economy, so frankly, they have less to lose. And they use cheap, asymmetric warfare to make things incredibly expensive for their enemies. So you see what's happening here? Iran isn't trying to win in a traditional sense. They're trying to outlast everyone else and drive global costs so high that other countries just give up. So if most of the countries actually involved are losing money, who's winning? Well, the answer is pretty clear. And it's not subtle. Russia is emerging as the conflict's biggest financial winner, hands down. I mean, just look at this number. This isn't over a year or even a month. This isn't just the first 12 days of the conflict. Russia's oil revenues skyrocketed by an estimated $1.3 to $1.9 billion. That's a direct cash infusion into their economy, and it's all funded by global instability. And it didn't stop there. Early on, they raked in an extra 6 billion euros just from fossil fuel sales. Here's the really crucial part. This war makes sanctioned Russian oil more valuable, and for a lot of buyers, more necessary. They are literally profiting from the very chaos they helped create. Okay, let's pivot to another world power, China. Now, their position is a little more nuanced. It's not about an immediate cash grab.
For them, it's about playing the long game and becoming the quiet, strategic winner. So, in the short term, yeah, China feels the pain. As a massive oil importer, high prices hurt. But here's the thing, they are absolute masters at turning a crisis into an opportunity. They're using this shock to pour fuel on their renewables boom. We've seen their stocks jump around 30%, and to diversify where they get their energy. And maybe most importantly, they're using this as a chance to push the petro-yuan, slowly but surely chipping away at the US dollar's total dominance in the oil game. So what about the other Gulf nations? You'd think high oil prices would be great for them, but it's a real mixed bag of losses. Take Saudi Arabia. You could call them a paradox loser. Yeah, oil prices are high, but the regional instability and shipping risks mean they're struggling to even get their product out to the market. And then you have the UAE and Bahrain, who are even more exposed because their entire economies rely on being stable financial hubs, and that's directly threatened by all this conflict. And that economic pain just keeps radiating outward, and it's hitting South Asia really hard. India is a major economic loser here, getting slammed by massive oil import bills and also risking the flow of money sent home from its citizens working in the Gulf. Pakistan is in a very similar, very tough spot, facing what's basically an imported economic crisis with absolutely no upside. Okay, so we've looked at all the key players, we've seen who's making money, who's losing money, and who's just trying to survive. Let's put it all together on the final financial scoreboard. And here it is, the final tally. In the green are clearest winners. You've got Russia, just cashing in on that oil windfall, and China, playing the long game for a strategic advantage. In yellow, the picture's a bit murky. Iran is managing to survive by using its leverage, while Saudi Arabia is kind of trapped by its own geography. And then in the red, we've got a long list of losers. The US and Israel are just bleeding cash, while countries like India, the UAE, Bahrain, and Pakistan are all paying a very, very heavy price. So all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important takeaway. We really need to reframe how we think about this entire conflict. This single sentence really changes everything, doesn't it? This isn't a sprint to capture a piece of territory, it's a marathon of economic endurance. You've got Russia profiting, China adapting, Iran enduring, and pretty much everyone else is left paying the bill. It's just a contest of who can withstand the most financial pain for the longest time. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. When victory isn't measured by firepower, but by financial resilience, who has the will, and more importantly, the wallet to last? In this brutal war of economic endurance, who's going to blink first?